Dzień dobry, nazywam się Błażej Hrabkowicz. To jest 28. edycja festiwalu EnergaCAMERIMAGE w Toruniu i oczywiście w tym roku online. Hello, my name is Błażej Hrabkowicz. This is the 28th edition of EnergaCAMERIMAGE Festival in Toruń and in online. We know what times we are living in, but the festivals are going on and we have fantastic guests. Festiwale trwają, są organizowane, mamy wspaniałych gości i teraz naszym gościem jest, our guest is cinematographer Vicci Turpin. Hello.
Hi, nice to see you and meet you.
Nice to see you and meet you too. Of course, here on the festival you have a film called Poppie Nongena. But I want to ask you about something else, because I'm always fascinated when I look into the work of filmmakers who are behind major motion pictures in the festival competition. And I find early on films like Shark Attack, Cold Harvest, you know, this, and you have such a fantastic B-movie catalog in your career. And it's really brilliant, because I'm a big fan of B movies. I enjoy watching even, you know, not so great B movies. But from for the purpose of our interview, I would like to ask you what this experience with this kind of filmmaking, what the experience with B movies and so on at the start of your career, what did it give you? What did you get from it?
I think it was the most important time of my career, and the DP or cameraman I worked for was actually Polish-Israeli, Yossi, and he taught me, the day I walked into the camera truck, he said, "What is a woman doing in the camera truck?" And this was the start of, you know, those B movies, and they said, "No, she'll be all right." And anyway, there was no budget, there was lots of stunts, everything was on BLs, film, handheld. And there was one take, and if you missed it as an operator or as a focus puller, you were gone, and they just get another crew member. So, and he grew to like me and teach me a hell of a lot about operating. For me, it was the base of, you know, I did so much operating on them, and there was no time. It was hardcore stuff. And it was really fantastic. You know, I was one of the boys. We worked hard. We got injuries. You get sent to hospital. You come back stitched up, and you carry on. You know, it was that kind of thing. And nowadays, I find everyone's a bit prescient, you know. And it was a really good place to cut your teeth on. And especially as a woman, I mean, I learned to do dog fights out of Sikorskis, and you know, handheld with BLs and running with horses and on really old rigs and a lot of underwater work. Incidentally, I couldn't get to operate. They said to me, I just never could get a break as an operator, although I'd been in the camera department a long time. Yeah. But I could always dive, and I was the only one who could operate underwater in the country in the early days. So I got there and I became like a frog, amphibious, and I came out the water, and then they trusted me. So that was cool. And yeah, the great movies were great to work on. You know, they were fun. And I was young, and I made some good friends, worked with great people. Yeah.
You're describing working on the B movies a bit like a guerrilla war. And that's, if I'm understanding it correctly.
It was, and it was, when you're learning, I think it's a very good area to be in, because you're not protected, you don't have all the toys, and each person is, if you don't deliver the goods, you're gone, and they just replace you. Yeah. That's how it was.
You mentioned being a woman in a very masculine environment, and you mentioned the DP having doubts about you as a woman working there. Was that a significant problem in your career? Because you just mentioned that you couldn't get a break as a camera operator and DP for a long time. Do you believe that some kind of sexism and misogyny also came into place here?
There was a lot of that. But you see, I first studied photography for 3 years. And I worked for a very good fashion photographer first for a year. And there was none of that because there were women photographers all around the world. And that was early 80s. And then I moved into the film industry, and I was so confused because I've been playing with cameras since I was 4 years old. You know, and it's about image making, but especially in South Africa. I mean, South Africa in those days was testosterone city, you know. And there was a lot of things happened to me over my career, but it just went over my head because I loved what I was doing so much. And funnily enough, Yossi turned out to be the turning point in my career. He taught me so much, and he was the one marker who really was horrified when I walked into the camera truck. And he died recently, but I became his best disciple. He would be so proud now, just, you know, because he always talked about Poland. So, and there was a lot of that along the way. You know, I did a lot of commercials and big commercials. And
he talked about Poland. Did I understand you correctly? He talked about Poland.
Yossi, he was Polish.
Oh,
the
really?
Guy who taught me. Oh. Yeah, Yossi Vine, and he was. A lot of those big great movies were Israeli, but he was half. But his grandmother was from Siberia. I knew his whole life history by the time he ended, and he loved Poland, and that was, you know, he just always said, you've got to go there one day. And and he taught me the ground glass is like a big theater stage. Don't move or get scared, and, you know, little things that he took years to learn. So it was great grounding. And I must say, in commercials, you know, there were these huge beer commercials, and the director I worked with said, I'm fighting because they don't want you because you're a woman. And there was a lot of that going on always. And I'd done a lot of big work. And then I said, I don't want to do the job then. And he said, no, I'm going to fight for you. And I went, no. And then the next job came along, and he fought for me. And I shot it all at tragic hour. And the agency were like, what is she doing? You know, it was a 6-day shoot. I was shooting 10 minutes in the morning and 10 in the evening with helicopters. And it turned out amazing. And then I got booked for every alcohol commercial in South Africa. You know, you just got to get through it. And, you know, there's a lot of, everyone has their problems. And I think if you're passionate and love it enough, you get through it. I find women are actually given a huge advantage nowadays, almost too much, you know, so you don't know if you're getting the job because you're a woman now. Whereas in the old days, I knew if I got that job, it was merit, yeah.
Coming back to, or not coming back, but to moving towards Poppie Nongena. This is a movie based on a very, very famous African novel, regarded as one of the best novels. And for you, as a South African, was this project especially important in terms of the story it tells?
It definitely was. I feel there's still a lot of poppies around at the moment, from both sides, races, and from all around the world. And as a woman, particularly because I liked the way the director was approaching it. He was very true to the story. He picked a good area of the story. And I think it was important to show through the camera language her courage and she was stuck between two families, which happened in this country. We all knew poppies, you know, growing up even. And nobody knew quite what these women go through, and still today, and how early they are up in the mornings, and they're living between two families, and both families have problems, and she just kept going, and it's a very emotional story for me, and a very important story of many mothers out there who and I think it was terribly important for me.
Well, you mentioned trying to depict her courage through camera language. What was your thinking, yours and directors, of course, for visual language of this film, visual style? What was your main idea here? What did you try to achieve?
I think reality. For me, we scouted a lot to find the most, exactly where she traveled, to depict the complete contrasts of the two worlds, how far she had to travel, what she went through. And for me, from a camera point of view, I didn't want to get too tricksy. I felt it's not a place to be trying to show off with sort of different camera styles. It needed to be documented. And as far as lighting goes, which was very important to me, I needed to see her expression. I needed to show her performance. She's an incredible actress. It's a very emotional film, and so it was very hard because I was dealing with a lot of contrasting skin tones, a lot of contrasting light. We shot in a recce sort of end of winter, and it was still hot, but by the time we shot, it was really blasting hot sunlight. So I was dealing with heavy contrast. And for me, I had to get rid of that to be able to show her emotion and just be a bystander watching it pass. Mm-hmm. As far as the director and myself collaborated a lot, I've always been obsessed with Reuters since I was young. I look at the photographers every sort of week because I find it very important to try and put across natural light. And in cinema, it's so hard because it's just not one frame. It's for a whole section of time. But the photographs are so beautiful when they are done true to whatever situation they're doing. And that's what I tried to do. But the director liked working one takes. And he was used to Steadicam, and he was used to a lot of depth, so you could see all the actors. I come from the opposite of long lenses, tracking, dropping out, shooting. So we had to find a common ground. So we had a lot of recce's, and we needed to go to places that Poppie had really been. A lot of the places we shot in were the original pass office, and then you had to think, are the crew going to be safe here? I've shot in dangerous places before, and some of them weren't dangerous, some were, but can you control it? And it was a period piece because it had to be in the 70s. So we went back like 4 times each, and I'd put the director in front and he would walk it through, and we'd say, okay, that's going to work, take stills. And I think together we collaborated and tried to document it as truthfully as it really was.
Yeah, you mentioned dangerous. Do you believe that these sort of stories like Poppie Nongena, you also worked on the film Four Corners. Of course, the South Africa has a legacy of apartheid, which we all know about. But do you believe that this legacy is one of the most important reasons why it can still be a dangerous place?
I think it stems from that originally, for sure, and the areas in Cape Town where we're working now are filled with gangs. So that's a different thread coming in, and a lot of drug dealing. And there's a lot of, Four Corners was hectic, the locations I shot in. And that taught me a lesson on how to film in those locations and where not to film. And I think, apartheid was the stem of everything, equality and masses of people living together. And you are going to get drug lords and all kinds of things springing up. And a lot of the areas Poppie came from, I was totally, Four Corners was another story, wrecking and stuff, ducking and diving. But Poppie, Langas, they're beautiful communities and very safe areas. And it's just also about filming, getting in and out to those areas with the trucks and just making sure that the production's going to keep going. And so those are things we had to think about, and also filming without crowds coming in, because we made that mistake on Four Corners, I feel.
What kind of mistake?
We shot in the real areas, and you pay the blocks and you pay your location fees, and we were shooting in serious gangster areas in some places. And then the crowds come and they just want money, and then violence, and then they, you know, some of them are on drugs, and it becomes out of control. I mean, there was a guy running with a knife at me. I had to jump off the dolly, and then the crew just wrapped the gear, you know, and they're out of there. And so when I worked with Christiaan Olwagen, we wanted to shoot in Khayelitsha, which is a township next to Langa, and more the area that Poppie came from. But the main reason we didn't was technologically, you know, it's just so advanced now. And so we went to a smaller township that I know and shot a lot there, and then shot at the studios as well.
It turns out that you have to be careful when where you shoot as a cinematographer, as a filmmaker, because it's not always safe. Thank you very much, Vicci, for this conversation. We regret we cannot meet, of course, in person in Toruń because of this situation. But let's hope you will visit the festival in the future.
I will definitely. Thank you very much.
So stay safe, and thank you for the conversation. Bye.
Okay, pleasure. Bye-bye.